She called him a washed-up loser lawyer. Not even a lawyer, she added.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
For the record, Jamie Raskin was a constitutional law professor at American University for more than 2 decades before being elected to Congress. He was the lead impeachment manager in the second Trump impeachment trial. He taught the Constitution for a living. He wrote a book about it. Bondi called him not even a lawyer because he told her she could not filibuster his time. That sentence, you can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch, not on our time, is what produced the outburst. Raskin was not out of order. He was not screaming. He was telling the Attorney General, plainly, that she would not run out the clock on his questions the way she had run out the clock on other members throughout the 5-hour hearing. Bondi's response was to shout him down with an insult. "You don't tell me anything, you washed-up loser lawyer." Raskin looked at her. "Yeah," he said, "I did tell you, because we saw what you did in the Senate." That exchange happened because of what Raskin had been pressing her on, and what he had been pressing her on was a connection that nobody in that room wanted to make explicit, but that Raskin made explicit anyway. He had opened his remarks by welcoming the Epstein survivors sitting behind Bondi in the hearing room, the 11 women dressed in white who had not been invited to meet with Bondi or anyone from her department. Raskin asked them to raise their hands if they had never been contacted by the DOJ. Every hand went up. Then he said it. "You are running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice." Not an accusation framed as a question. A statement, documented, based on the record, the names of alleged co-conspirators redacted while survivor names were published. The 86-page SDNY prosecution memo withheld. The draft indictments of Epstein's co-conspirators never produced. 0 new indictments against anyone in Epstein's network in 14 months. And the Maxwell transfer from a higher security prison to a minimum security camp in Texas, days after a 2-day meeting with Bondi's own deputy, Todd Blanche, who had previously been Trump's personal defense attorney. Raskin's summary was precise. "You acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims raped, abused, and trafficked. This performance screams cover-up." Bondi said she was not going to get in the gutter for his theatrics. Then she called him a washed-up loser lawyer. But here is what made this hearing different from every other Epstein hearing before it. Raskin connected 2 separate stories into one argument that Bondi could not answer. He asked whether a settlement between the government and Trump on the $10 billion IRS lawsuit would violate the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. The Emoluments Clause is one of the most specific prohibitions in the Constitution. It says the president shall receive a fixed salary and shall not receive any other payment from the United States government. It exists for one reason: to prevent the person running the government from using that position to extract money from the public treasury. Trump filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS and the Treasury Department, both agencies he oversees. The lawsuit alleges that a contractor leaked his tax records. The case would be settled by the DOJ, which Bondi runs, which answers to Trump, and any payment would come from the Federal Judgment Fund, taxpayer money, dispersed by a department controlled by the plaintiff. Raskin asked Bondi directly, would a settlement with Trump violate the Emoluments Clause? Bondi said she would not discuss pending litigation. Raskin pushed, "This is not about the litigation. This is a constitutional question. Does paying the president money from the federal treasury violate the clause that prohibits the president from receiving money from the federal treasury?" Bondi accused Raskin of being obsessed with Trump. Then Raskin asked the question that made the 2 stories, Epstein and the $10 billion lawsuit, inseparable. He asked whether the survivors of Epstein's crimes, whose personal information and nude photographs have been published by Bondi's DOJ in violation of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, were entitled to damages from the federal government. He did not ask it as rhetoric. He asked it as law. The same statute that requires compensation for government misconduct that Trump was invoking in his IRS lawsuit That same statute would apply to the survivors whose identities Bondi's DOJ had published without consent. If Trump can sue the government for the unauthorized disclosure of his private information, what about the women whose names and images Bondi's department put on the internet? Bondi did not answer. She called Raskin washed up. She called him a loser. She said he wasn't even a lawyer. He is a constitutional law professor who spent the hearing demonstrating why the two biggest legal controversies surrounding Bondi, the Epstein files and the Trump lawsuits, are not separate stories. They are the same story. A Department of Justice that protects the powerful and exposes the vulnerable, that processes Trump's $10 billion claim with deference while publishing the identities of his trafficking victims, that redacts the names of alleged co-conspirators while leaving survivor photographs on a public website. The survivors were sitting behind Bondi the entire time. Every hand raised when asked who had not been contacted by the DOJ, and Bondi refused to turn around. Raskin told her that was her legacy, that she was siding with the perpetrators and ignoring the victims, that unless she changed course quickly, history would record what happened in that hearing room. Bondi called him a washed-up loser lawyer. The survivors were still sitting behind her when she said it,